Ladies, gentlemen, and young and obviously most enthusiastic students who will be passing out shortly. I am most grateful to Subhashji and Meghna Gai for inviting me to be the guest of honor at today's convocation. I must confess to a certain degree of nervousness. This is not because I am unused to convocations. In fact, every time one receives an honorary doctorate in Britain, one is expected to follow it up with a convocation address. And I have done about 12 so far, including one last week at the University of Liverpool. But I am daunted because I am used to a gathering of boring university professors and enthusiastic young students. This convocation is quite different. Made up as it is of many eminent men and women of our film industry whom I have admired over the years, and also young and future filmmakers and directors. You will therefore forgive me if I disappoint you for next 15 odd minutes by sounding boringly professorial. I've been associated with Whistling Woods International since its birth a few years ago and have watched its progress with great interest and affection. Infant mortality amongst our institutions is fairly high, and even those institutions that do survive often tend to lose their sense of purpose and inspiring vision. Happily, this is not the case with Whistling Woods International, and I wish it well in years to come. Ever since we Indians began our struggle for independence against the British rule, the founding fathers of our nationalist movement argued that India was a great civilization. It had been marginalized by history, and the time has come, as Pandit Nehru said in his famous speech, for a tryst with destiny, when India will take its rightful place in the Council of Nations. Thanks to our labors during the last 60 years of independence, we are at last on the move. And the status of being a great power on 20 or 30 years' time is within our grasp. Greatness, however, does not come easy. It requires hard work, a vision, and most important of all, a clear understanding of the dangers that lie in front of us and the knowledge of how to overcome them. I'm afraid we are increasingly becoming a little too complacent during recent years and somewhat blind to the dangers that lie ahead of us. And as a philosopher who has spent most of his life, 45 years in Britain, apart from a few years here as Vice Chancellor of a university, somebody who has observed this country with great affection and with a sense of detachment, I fear that we are not sufficiently sensitive to three important dangers that can easily frustrate our ambition to be a great power. The first, of course, has to do with poverty. The official figures tell us that 27% of our population is below the poverty line. But that's only if you define poverty in terms of those who earn less than $1 a year. If you define poverty in terms of calorie consumption, which requires $2 a year, 67% of our population is poor. And that is a national shame. There is also the second danger, and that is the increasing bifurcation of India into two kinds of Indians. Those who are rooted, local, and those who are footloose and cosmopolitan. A new middle class is beginning to grow, which is largely consumerist, culturally shallow, and lacking social conscience. It's interested in entertainment and fun, rather than in commitment to the country. Cinema, for example, has increasingly ceasing to be an art and becoming an entertainment. If we are not careful, even the great game of cricket will be going that way. I think Javed Akhtar, whom I heard at a conference a couple of years ago, said, and I'm sure he must be right, that the quality of language in our films has declined and the vocabulary has shrunk and is becoming smaller and smaller. The third danger we have is national integration and integration of minorities into the national mainstream. This is not only the case with the tribals in the northeast and elsewhere, but also our Muslim community. And as the Sacher report a couple of years ago points out, they are, in many cases, a highly marginalized and discriminated community. They have been loyal citizens of India, just as the majority of the Hindus have been welcoming to Muslims and a lot of others. But nevertheless, events occurred like Gujarat of 2002 and the constant complaint about discrimination and marginalization of our Muslim community. I think it is in this context of these three dangers, poverty, increasing bifurcation of Indians into two classes of Indians, and the integration of minorities, that we ought to see the role of the cinema. The film is a very powerful medium in any country, particularly in one like ours, where the literacy rate is low. Nation building is a frightfully complex enterprise, and even strong nations can easily unravel. Take the case of Great Britain, where I have spent 45 years of my life as a professor, and there is always a danger that Scotland might break up. If a country with that kind of history is in constant danger, what about one like ours? The question, therefore, is how do you bring different communities together, develop a common language in which they are able to talk to each other and communicate their sentiments and feelings? In the West, the novel played a very important role, which is why the novel as a genre of writing first emerges in the 18th century and plays a very important role in the 19th and 20th centuries as a nation-building enterprise. In a country like ours, where literacy rate is low, the film has taken over that role. And therefore, I should have thought that any film that is being made, or the role of the cinema, is threefold in a country like ours: to give voice to the voiceless, and to become the conscience of those who suffer at the hands of economic progress. Secondly, to create a common public culture, so that all Indians, wherever they are, whatever the regional languages, are able to communicate with each other in a common language, and to contribute to the cause of national integration. And that involves breaking down stereotypes of different communities, and also gradually breaking down those inhibitions that prevent one community from talking about another in a certain manner. And that is my most important message to the young graduates of today. But we must also remember that India is increasingly a part of a globalizing world, and our films must reach out to the rest of the world. Unfortunately, they haven't done that. And that raises two questions. Why should we try to reach out to the world when we have a large domestic market of our own? And secondly, what have been the bottlenecks in the translation of Indian films into the cultural language of the West? Let me take these two questions in that order. It's very important that India should reach out to the world for at least three reasons. The first, of course, which I don't need to tell the Whistling Woods and International and others, is the economic reason. It gives you market, it gives you money. The second reason is political. At the end of the day, no nation is great, no nation is powerful, unless it has soft power. Power to influence the minds and thoughts of people all over the world. And films gives you that political power. And the third reason why we need to reach out to the rest of the world is cultural. A great civilization like ours, a multi-ethnic and open society like ours, has something to say on the troubled issues of our day. And the film is one medium through which we can say that. In the global conversation that is going on, only the Hollywood voices are widely heard. It is important that our voices should also be heard. And in this context, I must say that I don't feel terribly happy, and I have said so in print, with the term Bollywood. It seems to show that we are somehow casting ourselves in the image of Hollywood. I mean, after all, there is no Bolly. It's Mumbai, it's not even Bombay. And I don't know what Bollywood is supposed to refer to, but I think basically what we mean is the film industry of India. Now, films don't easily translate because they are culturally embedded. Take, for example, Nigeria, which is the third largest manufacturer of films, but it doesn't travel easily, partly because of the themes that are chosen, which are about demonic possessions and witchcraft, the styles of acting, which are extravagant and rather pompous, intensive photography, and poor editing. The only film industry that has traveled easily, although not that easily, is Hollywood. And it might be worth asking why. Well, obviously, because of the great control of the global media. Also, Hollywood was the first to get into the business of mass production, long before the Europeans did. Also because they have the vast prestige of the American power and vast resources, and there is aggressive marketing. But these are not the only reasons. Even if Nigeria or we ourselves had all these advantages, our films would not necessarily translate unless the theme, unless the message, the language is universally accessible. And that is what has happened in the case of Hollywood. Here is a country which is multi-ethnic, drawing its directors and actors and actresses and cameramen and film producers from all over the world. And therefore the film industry is a crucible of different national and cultural sensibilities. With the result that most of the films, not all, but most of, at least many of the films that come out of Hollywood, either deal with themes which are universally common and resonate, or they are intensely local, American, but presented in such a way that that local experience is reiterated, reproduced in different cultures in their own different ways. What lessons do we learn for our own country? Indian films, by and large, are enjoyed abroad in those countries which share our cultural background, like South Asia, Southeast Asia, parts of Africa, or the NRIs who are settled abroad. But beyond the NRIs in the Western world, our films have not been able to make a breakthrough. And I should have thought that we, of all the countries in the world, are uniquely equipped to reach out to the world and say something intelligent and meaningful and emotionally appealing. If we are going to realize our potential, we need to do a lot of things. And ever since I've been associated with Whistling Woods and its Subhashbhai and lots of others, I've been sharing some thoughts with them. First, of course, I think we need to do some research on why our films don't translate, or why some do and others don't. And that requires an intense intellectual effort. And if I had the time, which I don't, I would have shared with you some thoughts that I encountered in the course of attending one or two seminars of this kind in a British university. But first thing, I think we need to do some research on how we can be a global power, global film power. Secondly, I think we need to see the cinema more and more as an art rather than just an entertainment, a place to laugh, but a place that can destabilize you and leave you slightly discontented with what you are. Third, I think we need to move beyond the consumerist middle class consciousness by exploring neglected areas and experiences and sensibilities and drawing in our directors, actors and others from a wider section than the middle class. The fourth thing I think we need to do is to attract best script writers. And you don't get script writers cheap or easily. In order to be a good script writer, you must be familiar with other civilizations, other cultures. You must be deeply embedded in serious literature, which gives you ideas as to how different things can be explored. Fifthly, I think we need not think that in order to be globalizable, the themes must be Western. In fact, as I said earlier in the case of Hollywood, very often the more local the theme, the more universal its appeal. There can be nothing more local than communal violence in the case of India, for example, and yet presented in a certain way, it resonates, it translates it in terms of racial experiences, other kinds of ethnic conflicts in different parts of the world. So the local is not the enemy of the universal. We should also be thinking in terms of co-production, which is already beginning to happen, because that not only brings new markets, but also new ideas, new formats, new styles. And we should also, I think, be thinking in terms of a national agency, like the Motion Pictures Association of the United States, to look after the Indian film interest. And if I may put in a plug here, it's very important for all great films to be associated with scholars and philosophers and historians and scientists. And I think we often make films about historical themes without being fully aware of how that history has moved on. And I have in mind, if I had time again, I would have said a little more, a film like Lage Raho Munna Bhai, and where we have the idea of Gandhi Giri. And the question is, did the producers of the film or the directors bother to consult any scholar of Gandhi or Gandhiji in order to find out if this would be seen as a Gandhian form of action? And as somebody who has written 3 books on the Mahatma, and I said in the interview when the film came out that although I greatly enjoyed it, wonderful innovative film, I would have felt that there were occasions where the film was not quite true to even the spirit of the Mahatma. Remember that scene, for example, where this old man who wants his pension and takes off his clothes one by one and says, does this amount to the bribe you want? Now this is an example where you are shaming somebody into do something, where the whole philosophy of Gandhiji is based not on shaming someone, but on arousing a sense of guilt. And shame and guilt are very different emotions, and the film steadily and systematically confuses two. And I would have thought that a quiet word with a Gandhi scholar would have enhanced the appeal of the film. I think I have said enough to bore you all in a very professorial kind of way, so I want to end by congratulating all of you who have successfully completed your courses at this fine institute. As you go out into the wide world, I hope you will see yourself as artists with a vision and a mission. Do make money, that's important. Do enjoy fame, that's important. But do also remember that a noble and satisfying life involves much more than both of them. It involves being true to yourself and to your great calling. And it also involves serving this great country of ours and the struggling humanity that lies beyond it. We shall follow, as I shall, your careers with hope and expectation. Thank you.